Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 29 based on novel. So let's start. Clear sounds rang across the skies above the mountain peak, seemingly possessing some sort of magical power, as they caused the entire area to fall into complete silence. All that remained were the surrounding gazes that were unblinkingly locked onto the two people on the stage. Under the convergence of innumerable gazes, Wang Yang faintly raised his head and looked at the slim and slender lady in front of him. A ripple of emotion appeared within his originally indifferent eyes, while a complicated expression emerged on his originally emotionless face. "You've always been so calm and cool-headed since you were young. To think that you haven't changed at all after all these years," Wang Yang said with his hoarse voice. "You, on the other hand, have changed quite a bit, senior brother Wang Yang," Ying Xiaoxiao replied softly, gazing at that especially weather-beaten face, which in reality could be considered young. Wang Yang smiled faintly and turned silent for a while before saying, "Given how smart you are, you should already have guessed my reason for returning. You know who I am. If and when we trade blows later, I'll show no mercy." Ying Xiaoxiao's chest heaved up and down as she took a deep breath of the cold and refreshing air. Looking straight at Wang Yang with her clear eyes, she said, "Senior brother Wang Yang should also know me well." Although she did not elaborate, she knew that Wang Yang understood the meaning behind her words. A trace of darkness flashed past those indifferent-looking eyes, before he shook his head and said, "Someday, I will repay the Dao sect with my life." Ying Xiaoxiao sighed and declined to speak any further. The current Wang Yang was already extremely prejudiced, and words would be unable to get to him. In that case, the only way left was to knock sense into him through the match. "Senior brother Wang Yang, make your move." Feeling the bright gaze from Ying Xiaoxiao, Wang Yang slowly clenched his fists. Soon after, the darkness in his eyes diminished bit by bit as his usual indifference made its appearance once again. Outside the stage, Ying Huan's jade-like hand involuntarily clenched tightly. Her lips were tightly pursed together as she stared at the two people facing each other on the stage. Soon after, a somewhat sad expression appeared on her lips. The scene before her was something that no one wished to see. On the seat atop the tall platform, Ying Xuan's eyes were a deep and still abyss as he stared at the stage. He faintly closed his eyes, waving his hand with a sigh. Upon seeing this, only then did the deacon on the stage nod his head, and with a sudden wave of his hand, exclaimed, "Let the match begin." Bang! Two boundless and surging yuan powers seemingly erupted at the same time from within both of their bodies. The robustness of the yuan power made the expressions on the faces of even those great direct disciples of the Four Halls change. 9 yuan Nirvana stage, the peak of the Nirvana stage. This level was indeed deep and immeasurable. Swish! Ying Xiaoxiao's jade-like hand closed into a grip and a meter-long green peak sword wrapped in a green glow appeared within it in a flash. A chilling intent covered those clear and beautiful eyes before her body turned into a blur of light and shot forward. The blur of light was akin to a slender bolt of lightning and appeared in front of Wang Yang in a flash. The sharp green peak sword drew a swift and fierce arc as it pierced towards Wang Yang's front. Just as Ying Xiaoxiao's attack was about to hit its target, Wang Yang suddenly moved. At an instant, a chillingly cruel aura erupted from within his body. Extending two of his fingers without warning, he reached out and clamped the green peak sword piercing towards him directly between his bare fingers. Kai! The swift and fierce sword inches away from Wang Yang's forehead suddenly froze at this moment. Taking a step forward, his fingers traced along the length of the green peak sword and, like a poisonous snake, pierced towards Ying Xiaoxiao's hand that was holding the sword. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes contracted, as she sensed the frightening energy contained within Wang Yang's fingers. Immediately withdrawing her hands, the surface of the long sword erupted with resplendent green light. Shortly after, a clear and cold voice rang out, "Heavenly Star's 3 flowers sword." Kai kai kai! The green glow whizzed, and instantly changed into 3 sword flowers. Within those sword flowers were innumerable minute sword glows that were released strand by strand, causing an extremely destructive force to radiate outwards. Lin Dong's eyes hardened when the 3 sword flowers appeared. He could sense the fissomeness of this sword flower. If an HUR Nirvana stage expert were to be struck squarely by it, it would certainly lead to heavy injuries. Looks like it was not a false rumor that Ying Xiaoxiao was called the #1 person within the younger generation of the Dao sect. Facing such an attack by Ying Xiaoxiao, Wang Yang was not the slightest bit careless. Retreating 2 steps back, his hands closed into a grip and the black broadsword from his back shot forwards and landed in his hands. Black Demon Slash. Grasping the black broadsword in his hand, Wang Yang's face remained indifferent. Without any gaudy sword techniques, boundless yuan power crazily surged from him, sending down a furious slash. Xiao! A gigantic black sword glow burst out from the sharp end of Wang Yang's sword like a waterfall. Splitting the air, it slammed heavily onto the 3 magnificent sword flowers. Bang! A low and deep blast sounded out in mid-air as the black and green glows exploded. Exceptionally swift and fierce sword glows appeared to lose control and poured out madly in torrents, slashing directly at the entire stage, leaving it full of scars and pockmarks. A fragment of a sword glow passed swiftly over Wang Yang's face and left a bloody scratch on it. Without blinking, he stretched his tongue out and licked the bloodstain. This action made him look rather savage. Bang! Wang Yang's figure dashed forward once again, as the broadsword in his hand created fierce and violent arcs in the air, enveloping Ying Xiaoxiao as it headed towards her vitals. His moves were entirely different from hers. The fierceness and violence within them were filled with viciousness. Obviously, these few years of living life on the edge had forged his savage combat style. Facing Wang Yang's ferocious attacks, Ying Xiaoxiao did not yield in the slightest bit. Vigorous yuan power of the 9 yuan Nirvana stage completely gushed forth from within her. A sword glow that blotted out the skies came forth from the meter-long green peak sword and smashed heavily into the broadsword. Clank clank. The 2 figures crisscrossed on the platform like specters as their swords made contact with each other. Sparks sputtered and scattered about as the resulting clash of sword chi cut the entire stage into a complete disorderly mess. Numerous gazes converged on the 2 spectral forms. The swift and fierce sword chi from there caused the scalps on the heads of many grow numb. They knew that if they were to trade places with them, they would perhaps have been chopped into many pieces by the sword chi. What a fierce and violent sword chi! At the area where the desolate hall disciples were, Pang Tong and the rest muttered as they looked in shock at the stage where the 2 were trading blows. As expected of great senior sister Xiao Xiao. Her strength is indeed formidable, even senior brother Wang Yang can't deal with her. Junior brother Lin Dong, looking at this match, who do you think has a greater chance of victory? Fang Yun asked with a smile after exclaiming in admiration. Lin Dong wrinkled his eyebrows before faintly shaking his head. He did not make a verdict. However, a faint trace of concern flashed past in the depths of his eyes. From the current situation on the stage, they were indeed evenly matched. Ying Xiaoxiao's strength was not a single bit inferior to Wang Yang's, and her timing of attack and defense was quite perfect. However, when compared with Wang Yang, she was lacking a portion of viciousness. Clearly, Wang Yang was one who had experienced life-or-death battles. When he went on the offensive, it was an all-out effort with no thought of withdrawal. A person like him fought with all his life and would use the slightest of costs to exchange for the greatest benefits. Sometimes, in a match between experts, all it takes is for one's momentum to be slightly surpassed for one to fall into a complete disadvantage, and sometimes even have one's flaws exposed and dealt a fatal blow. Therefore, while the situation on the stage may look alright for her, Lin Dong knew that Wang Yang was merely finding a specific opportunity. Once a person like him was able to grasp an opportunity, he would end the match on his very next move. Hopefully great senior sister Xiao Xiao will realize it. Lin Dong sighed secretly. He was not familiar with Wang Yang, therefore he naturally hoped for Ying Xiaoxiao to clinch victory in this match. As he was in thought, his gaze suddenly looked towards Sky Hall area. A slender and elegant young lady sporting a ponytail stood there. Her pretty face was filled with nervousness and some deeply concealed unease, as if she too had come to a certain realization. The young lady's senses were quite keen and acute. She turned her head around when Lin Dong looked towards her, a pair of big black eyes interlocking with his. As their gazes intertwined, the young lady's face did not turn red this time. Instead, a sad color flashed within those bright and beautiful eyes, like the dark and gloomy clouds in the blue sky. It made one feel somewhat sorry for her. Sigh? Lin Dong gave a soft sigh and turned his head. His gaze was cast once again towards the arena, while his eyes faintly flickered. Another extremely clear metallic sound spread across the arena. Sharp sword glows swept forth as the two figures hurriedly took over a dozen steps back. The hard ground where their feet landed was also turned to dust due to the sword chi that seeped out. Their attacks were unusually sharp and ferocious. It seemed like her reputation as the strongest Dao sect younger generation member, and his second-placed ranking on the sect's wanted list were indeed not from nothing. Ying Xiaoxiao steadied her body. Her simple and noble face was filled with a rather grim expression. After the previous exchange, she could already tell that Wang Yang was not inferior to her. The battle today might not be easy for her, but in order to prevent Wang Yang from obtaining the commanding authority of the Dao sect disciples during the great sect competition, she must stop him no matter what. Light flickered in her clear eyes, and a determined expression suddenly flashed across her face. Her body moved as she leapt into the air, while her delicate hands suddenly formed numerous dazzling seals at lightning speed. Buzz buzz. Following the change in Ying Xiaoxiao's hand seals, everyone clearly sensed the surrounding yuan power begin to boil. While the surrounding yuan power boiled, a bright light scattered from Ying Xiaoxiao's body. An extremely dazzling sight. This is, Great Senior Sister Xiaoxiao is about to use the Sky Emperor scripture. Numerous disciples watched the unusual activity in the sky. Soon after, a shocked expression surged on their faces. They did not expect Ying Xiaoxiao to use a trump card like the Sky Emperor scripture so soon. She doesn't want to drag things out her. Lin Dong had similarly sensed the terrifying ripples surging around Ying Xiaoxiao, and his lips curled slightly. It seemed that Ying Xiaoxiao also understood that Wang Yang was extremely experienced. If this dragged on for a long time, the other party would definitely find an opening. In that case, it was better to act decisively. With the Sky Emperor scripture, it might be possible to change the situation. Vast and majestic fluctuations continuously swept in all directions like huge waves, with Ying Xiaoxiao at the center. The entire world appeared to have turned much dimmer at this moment. Senior brother Wang Yang, I am aware that you possess strong hatred in your heart. However, there is hardly anything you can do now. Some grudges are not so easy to forget. However, there will be a time to collect the debt in the future. Ying Xiaoxiao hovered in the sky. Her eyes were locked onto Wang Yang below, as a soft voice slowly transmitted downwards. Should we continue to swallow our pride then? A mocking expression appeared on Wang Yang's indifferent face. After which, he turned to glance at a particular spot on the tall stage. After which, he shook his head and solemnly said, I am no longer able to endure. Make your move. However, if you continue to be so soft, I will no longer show any mercy. During the great sect competition, those bastards from the Yuan Gate will not show any mercy to you. Wang Yang raised his head as a chilling glint gathered within his eyes. His ice-cold voice caused many Dao sect disciples to feel a chill all over their bodies. Helplessness flashed across Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes when she saw how resolute Wang Yang was. After which, she gently exhaled as she suppressed the churning emotions in her heart, and her changing hand seals suddenly stilled. Bang bang. Wave after wave of monstrous yuan power gathered wildly behind Ying Xiaoxiao. In the next moment, the enormous waves churned and transformed into a 1,000 feet large sword of light behind her. When the light sword appeared, the surrounding space appeared to become distorted. A majority of the Dao sect disciples turned pale at this moment. They could feel the destructive ripple emitted by the light sword. If this sword struck them, it was likely that not even their bones would be left. That light sword seemed to possess a terrifying strength that could slice apart the skies. The Sky Emperor scripture is powerful indeed. Lin Dong's eyes were surprised when he saw the enormous sword in the sky. The sharp ripple that was emitted from its surface caused him to feel extremely fearful. The four great mysterious scriptures of the Dao sect truly lived up to their reputations. Sky Emperor scripture. Great sky cloud scraping sword. Ying Xiaoxiao extended her hand in front of countless pairs of eyes. After which, she grabbed at the enormous light sword. In the next moment, a clear and cold cry suddenly emerged from her mouth. At the same time, her body appeared above the huge sword. After which, she suddenly swung her hand. Swoosh! As Ying Xiaoxiao's jade-like hand fell, the tip of the enormous light sword in the sky suddenly rotated. After which, it rushed directly towards Wang Yang in an explosive manner. Kai Kai! As the light sword rushed downwards, a glaring scar was left behind in the empty sky. It was as if even space itself was being forcefully ripped apart by this sword. The ground below collapsed at this moment. The frightening large sword had yet to land, but an incomparably sharp sword force was already sweeping downwards, hacking the enormous stage into two. Frightening wind pressure caused Wang Yang's clothes to be tightly pressed against his skin. However, the latter continued to stand still with his head held high while the enormous sword rapidly magnified in his eyes. Sky Emperor Scripture Her. Wang Yang's indifferent face appeared to move a little. Immediately, a low mumble was emitted from his mouth. Have you forgotten that I am also a disciple of the Sky Hall? Bang! After Wang Yang's voice sounded, wild and violent Yuan power suddenly erupted from within his body. The surrounding Yuan power boiled immediately at this moment. Finally, they transformed into an enormous light sword that was not inferior to Ying Xiaoxiao's. Between the two, Ying Xiaoxiao's light sword inclined towards dark green while a black glow undulated on Wang Yang's one, making it look dark and menacing. It is actually the Sky Emperor Scripture too. Countless pairs of eyes looked at the enormous sword that had formed behind Wang Yang. Soon after, a series of exclamations continuously rang out on the mountaintop. Lin Dong focused as he observed this scene. Wang Yang was also a disciple of the Sky Hall. Hence, it was not incredulous that he also possessed the Sky Emperor Scripture. Great Sky Cloud Scraping Sword. The surprised gazes that filled the entire place did not cause Wang Yang's expression to change the slightest. His sleeve suddenly waved as his enormous black light sword directly rushed out. At the same time, he moved his body and appeared on the large sword. After which, man and sword merged together as they viciously charged towards the light sword descending from the sky at lightning speed. Two bright lights flashed past the sky like two meteorites. After which, they collided with a loud bang under the countless watching gazes. Bang! The entire place trembled when the collision occurred as frighteningly sharp sword glows swept apart. The dozen surrounding large stages were all shattered into dust thanks to the sword glows. Some surrounding Dao sect disciples also hurriedly retreated because they were afraid of being dragged into the destruction. Black and green light frantically eroded each other in the sky. It was an earth-shattering sight and it felt as though Armageddon was about to arrive. Swoosh! A sharp sword glow whistled past Ying Xiaoxiao's ear, cutting a thread of her black hair. However, her clear eyes were still glued onto Wang Yang. Immediately, she clenched her silver teeth. A 3-feet green sword appeared in a flash. After which, it carried an unusually sharp aura as it pierced towards Wang Yang's throat. Wang Yang gazed at Ying Xiaoxiao's formidable attack. However, he surprisingly did not dodge as his hand reached out instead. It turned out that he wanted to use his bare hand to block Ying Xiaoxiao's sword attack, which could easily hack an 8-yuan Nirvana stage expert into two. Ying Xiaoxiao's expression changed when she saw this scene. She watched Wang Yang's scar-ridden face as she bit her lips. Kai? The moment the sword glow was about to penetrate Wang Yang's palm, a bitter smile appeared on Ying Xiaoxiao's face, and the sword suddenly slowed. Creak! The moment Ying Xiaoxiao's sword slowed, Wang Yang's palm had already grabbed it. The sharp sword glow instantly caused Wang Yang's hand to be covered with fresh blood. However, he completely ignored it. All he did was stare at the former. Finally, he shook his head slightly and spoke with a hoarse voice, I have already told you not to hold back. The current me is no longer the same senior brother Wang Yang from before. Xiao Xiao, do not blame me. Wang Yang's eyes slowly darkened. His other hand rushed out like lightning. With an extremely violent strength, he pressed it against Ying Xiaoxiao's shoulder. Bang! The wild and fierce force was just like an erupting volcano. Ying Xiaoxiao's lovely figure trembled as a muffled sound was emitted from her throat. After which, her body fell downwards and smashed onto the ground in a somewhat miserable manner. The low and deep sound directly shocked Ying Huan and caused her small face to turn pale. Swoosh! Just as Ying Xiaoxiao's body landed, a figure followed closely behind like a phantom. Before she could resist, a black broadsword that was suffused with a cold and sharp aura had already arrived in front of her. You lose. Wang Yang lowered his head. His eyes were indifferent as he watched Ying Xiaoxiao, whose pretty face was a little pale as he slowly said. The entire place was completely silent. Ying Huan, who was watching this scene, staggered a little. Her pretty face was also as pale as sheet. The scenario that had caused her the most unease had finally appeared. Can the result be announced? Wang Yang raised his head and looked towards the deacon as he said in an indifferent manner. The deacon was startled for a moment when he heard this. Immediately, he looked at Ying Xuanzi, who was seated on a tall platform. The expression of the latter remained as still as water. However, only Chen Zhen and the others seated beside him could see that some tiny cracks had appeared on the armrest of the chair where his hand was placed at. Ying Xuanzi finally nodded slowly under the watching deacon's eyes. Wang Yang wins this match. Upon seeing this, the deacon sighed in his heart. Finally, he announced in a loud voice. The voice spread, but the entire mountaintop was completely silent. However, Wang Yang ignored it. He kept his broadsword before he turned around and proceeded to leave. An indifferent voice sounded out when he turned, I will return when the great sect competition begins. Ying Xiaoxiao watched Wang Yang's back. At this moment, the eyes of the great senior sister of the Sky Hall, who had never showed any signs of weakness in front of others, suddenly reddened. Big sis. Ying Huan quickly landed beside Ying Xiaoxiao. She gazed at her red eyes and fell into a panicked state. It looked as if tears were about to roll down her huge eyes as well. The atmosphere of the entire mountain fell into a strange silence. Everyone watched Wang Yang departing with a black broadsword on his back, complicated expressions on their faces. Sigh, how troublesome. Lin Dong sighed when he saw the depressing atmosphere that pervaded the mountaintop. He kneaded his forehead, appearing to hesitate for a moment. Finally, he slowly walked forward. Swoosh! The moment Lin Dong walked forward, countless pairs of eyes gathered onto him. Even Ying Xiaoxiao and Ying Huan turned to look at him with lost expressions. Senior brother Wang Yang, the whole competition has not ended. It is perhaps a little too early to leave. The skinny young man spread his hands in a somewhat helpless manner under the watch of many puzzled gazes. After which, his voice echoed across the sky. A silent atmosphere enveloped the mountain top. Countless pairs of stunned and uncertain eyes looked over from all directions. Finally, they gathered on the skinny young man who had stepped forward. Junior brother Lin Dong, don't be reckless. Pang Tong and the rest were startled, before they hurriedly cried out. Although Lin Dong's previous battle with Qing Yi had thoroughly conquered them, Wang Yang was not someone whom Qing Yi could compare with. Even someone as powerful as Ying Xiaoxiao was defeated by him. Therefore, although Lin Dong was powerful, what could he do against Wang Yang? Lin Dong shrugged his shoulders somewhat helplessly at them. He did not want to fight with a ruthless person like Wang Yang, who had similarly experienced countless life and death battles. However, he had no other choice in the current situation. Lin Dong did not intend to play hero. However, he was also a disciple of the Dao sect. He did not want to see his sect, which he had some good feelings for, end up suffering a heavy loss because of Wang Yang's reckless decisions. Perhaps, he did not wish to see the usually lively young lady, the same adorable girl who infused color into the dull training lives of many disciples, to be so heart-achingly devastated. Of course, he knew that he was not the only one who had such thoughts. From the shattered arena, Ying Xiaoxiao and Ying Huan stared at Lin Dong in shock. The latter bit her lip and hesitated for a moment, before speaking. Lin Dong, don't mess around, he is very strong. Is there any other choice? Lin Dong glanced at her and laughed. Ying Huan was quiet. At this moment, Ying Xiaoxiao had also stood up. She stared at Lin Dong deeply, before softly speaking, "Do your best and be careful." She was aware that amongst the current disciples in the Dao sect, the only other person who could stop Wang Yang was perhaps Lin Dong, who had yet to reveal his true fighting strength since the start. Although she was aware that Wang Yang was ferocious, Lin Dong might be the only one who could contend with him. Lin Dong gently nodded. His body moved and landed on the stage. His eyes looked directly at the figure carrying a black broadsword a short distance away. "You are not my match." Wang Yang's footsteps also stopped at this moment, however, he did not turn around. Only a hoarse and indifferent voice sounded out. "Regardless, I should still try, right?" Lin Dong said with a grin. Wang Yang's body paused. A moment later, he finally slowly turned around, and stared intently at Lin Dong. His eyes were as sharp as blades, while a fearsome and menacing aura once again spread out from within his body. However, Lin Dong's expression did not change in the face of Wang Yang's menacing and evil aura. Instead, a slight trace of chilliness climbed up upon his smiling face. He was different from ordinary Dao sect disciples. Wang Yang might have experienced countless life and death battles, but Lin Dong had similarly climbed out from a pile of corpses. No one knew how many life and death battles he had experienced over the years. Therefore, Wang Yang must be mistaken if he believed that he could intimidate Lin Dong with his aura. Wang Yang looked straight at Lin Dong. The chilliness that had rose up on the latter's face caused a trace of surprise to flash across his eyes. He remained silent for a moment, before speaking, "Since you insist, we will do as you say. However, I shall say the same thing I had said earlier. I will not hold back in a fight." "What a coincidence, me too." Lin Dong grinned and said. After which, his eyes turned towards the seats on the tall stage. Seeing Lin Dong look over, Chen Zhen, Ji Lei and the other hall chiefs also turned to face each other. Finally, they looked towards Ying Xuanzi. Ying Xuanzi's ocean-like eyes stared at Lin Dong. A moment later, he appeared to laugh softly, before he gently nodded. Chen Zhen and the rest sighed in relief after seeing Ying Xuanzi nod. The latter stood up. His eyes swept over the entire place as he spoke in a low and deep voice, "This match will be the final one, and the victor will be the final champion. At the same time, he will also possess the authority to command the disciples during the great sect competition. If you are both ready, let the fight begin." After Chen Zhen's last few words faded, the atmosphere of the place suddenly froze. Swoosh! However, the frozen atmosphere merely lasted for a couple of breaths. Soon after, a shockingly baleful aura suddenly erupted from the stage. One could only watch as Wang Yang's body transformed into an afterimage. With his broadsword in his hand, his body shot forward in a straight line and ferociously pierced at Lin Dong's throat with surprising speed. When Wang Yang made his move, the long cautious Lin Dong's eyes hardened. His foot stomped on the ground as majestic green light swept out from within his body. Both his arms immediately wiggled and transformed into savage and mighty green dragon arms. His palm clenched as a black tree trunk appeared in a flash. Green light surged on his arms, while the strength within his body poured out. In the end, he furiously hacked downwards with the black metal-like tree. Clang! The broadsword and black tree suddenly collided in an instant, as sharp gales swept apart. The green scales on Lin Dong's arms flashed wildly, blocking the force that encroached upon his body. The next moment, his eyes turned cold. His left foot stepped forward and his body made a half-twist, while his right leg swung out like a whip. Bang! Green light surged on Lin Dong's leg as it swung out like a whip and transformed into a green dragon foot. Accompanied by an indescribably wild and violent strength, it ruthlessly swung towards Wang Yang's chest. The force from Lin Dong's kick was extremely terrifying. Previously, Jing Yi's defenses had been completely obliterated by such a kick. Even his heavenly soul treasure was forcefully sent flying back into the latter's body. It was obvious that Lin Dong did not plan to take it slow. The first strike was already extremely fearsome. He knew that any warm-up or probing was completely useless against a fearsome opponent like Wang Yang. Lin Dong's leg swung outwards. The frightening strength tore the air and ground apart as it fell towards Wang Yang's chest at lightning speed. A deep and piercing rushing wind sound could be heard. A fierce glint gathered within Wang Yang's eyes. He had similarly sensed the great strength from Lin Dong's kick and had no intentions of underestimating it. If someone like him adopted such a mindset, it was likely that he would have died countless times. Black Killing Fist? Wang Yang's broadsword blocked the black tree that was smashing over. Meanwhile, his other hand formed a fist. Black light suddenly erupted from his hand as a punch blasted forward. Kai? Wang Yang's punch did not possess a mighty momentum. However, his fist contained a monstrous killing intent. That murderous desire was so cold that it seemed almost lifelike. The fist seemingly covered the heavens and earth as it arrived, like the punch of a death god. Bang! The black light fist heavily collided with the dragon leg, and green light and black light swept out at the same time. They were just like two fearsome evil wolves that were maniacally trying to devour each other. Bang bang bang. The ground under the two directly collapsed. Numerous enormous cracks frantically extended from their feet like a spider web. The entire arena crumbled at this moment, causing the Dao sect disciples to tremble in fear. Swoosh! Lin Dong's eyes were ice cold. They narrowed when he saw that his ferocious attack was blocked by Wang Yang. The next moment, he suddenly pulled back his leg. A moment after doing so, his savage and mighty dragon foot once again whizzed out. It was accompanied by numerous afterimages and a deafening sonic boom as it enveloped Wang Yang at lightning speed. The green dragon leg, which contained a frightening force, rapidly magnified in Wang Yang's eyes. Lin Dong's storm of attacks caused a ferocious aura to climb into Wang Yang's eyes. He clenched his right fist tightly before suddenly throwing it forward. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Fist shadows covered the sky in front of Wang Yang. The fist shadows contained monstrous black light that surged with shocking undulations. Bang bang bang. The wind from the kick and the fist shadows finally collided all over the sky. Such power was undoubtedly earth-shaking, and the entire mountaintop appeared to tremble intensely at this moment. The surrounding stages were also shattered to dust due to the powerful resultant force. All the disciples were stunned as they watched the crumbling mountaintop. Clearly, they did not expect that the clash between the two would actually be so fearsome. Ying Xiaoxiao and Ying Huanhuan had already landed outside of the arena. They watched the clash on the stage as their expressions changed. Big sis, Lin Dong. Ying Huanhuan tugged at Ying Xiaoxiao's sleeve, some worry in her large eyes. She was aware that Lin Dong was quite powerful. However, this did not mean that he could face Wang Yang head-on. Don't worry, he knows what to do. He and senior brother Wang Yang are the same kind of person. Perhaps, in order to subdue a ruthless person like senior brother Wang Yang, one must be even more ruthless than him. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes stared intently at dust-filled stage as she softly replied. Ying Huanhuan pursed her lips and nodded gently. She had seen Lin Dong fight before. His ferocity and ruthlessness would never lose to senior brother Wang Yang. Every gaze contained thick shock as they observed the dust-filled stage. The stage had already collapsed. As a gentle breeze scattered the dust, rushing wind sounds hurriedly appeared. Two figures shot backwards from the dust. Their feet drew a 100-meter-long scar on the ground. Swoosh! Everyone turned to look at the two figures that had shot backwards. Soon after, a low uproar was heard. Currently, Wang Yang's hair was in a mess. The black broadsword in his hand was tilted towards the ground, while a trace of blood dripped down from the tip of his sword. One could vaguely see numerous glaring footmarks on his chest. On the opposite end, green dragon wings had once again appeared on Lin Dong's back. The green dragon scales on his body protected him like a scale armor. Nonetheless, everyone could still see some blood on his arm. Fresh blood followed the grooves of the scales and dripped downwards. The two of them had merely exchanged blows for a split second. However, it was incomparably ferocious. Each party had left their own scars on the other. This battle was truly intense. As they gazed at the two people in the arena, who were coldly staring at each other, the breathing of quite a number of Dao sect disciples slowed. Those two were just like two fierce tigers that dominated their own grass plains. When they clashed, it could only be described as desperate. Yet, at this very moment, no one knew who would remain laughing in the end. This video will end here.